Marked by the Flame, a Divine Black Love Story. Book 1 of the Divine Flame series, written by Lani Azur. Chapter 1. The Pulse of Purpose. The scent of collard greens, smoked turkey, and rosemary-infused cornbread danced through the air like an ancestral hymn. Carter Simone Wells stood behind the counter of her restaurant, understanding my plate, smiling at the long line of customers stretching out the door. The lunch rush always hit like clockwork, but today, something felt off. Not wrong, just different. She wiped her hands on her apron and nodded to Kyle, who was plating up grilled catfish over quinoa and stewed okra. "You good?" he asked, noticing the way she stared past the register like she was seeing something nobody else could. Carter blinked. The room flickered for a second, just a flash, and then it was gone. A vision, quick and soft like a whisper. A river, blood, fire. A voice. "Remember this time, Carter. Choose differently." She shook it off with a practiced smile. "Just tired," she lied. "Didn't sleep much." Kyle narrowed his eyes but didn't press. He knew Carter well enough to recognize when she was lying, but also knew she'd talk when she was ready. The bell above the door chimed. 4 men walked in. Tall, smooth, all with that "we run something" aura. Dressed clean, jewelry glinting in the sun that poured through the glass storefront. One stood in front. Him. As soon as he stepped in, time slowed like God hit the pause button. Enzo King. Carter didn't know his name, but she felt him. His energy didn't crash into her. It flooded her, like he'd been made with the same ingredients, shaped in the same hands that shaped her. Tall, muscular, peanut butter skin that caught the light like velvet. Tattoos teased from under his sleeves. And those eyes, brown, deep, ancient, like he'd seen things and survived them all. "Damn," Harper whispered from behind the bar. "Who was that? And where's he been hiding all this time?" Enzo's eyes locked with Carter's, and for a second, her breath caught in her throat. Another flash, a field, swords. Her blood on his hands, not from harm, but from protection. He stood over her, screaming her name, daring the shadows to come closer. Back in the real world, Carter steadied herself. "Welcome to understanding my plate," she said, voice calm despite her heart pounding like a drumline. "What can I get y'all?" Enzo stepped forward. "Heard this was the spot," he said, voice smooth like jazz but grounded like gravel. "Figured it was time to find out for myself." His cousins looked around, amused, but Enzo's eyes never left hers. She smirked. "Well, I hope you are hungry." "We don't disappoint." Carter tried to keep her face composed, but something in her spirit had already recognized his. And somewhere, far beyond that restaurant, in a place neither of them could see, something dark stirred and took notice. The clock on the wall ticked once, then twice. The countdown had begun. Chapter 2. The one Enzo didn't believe in fate. He believed in power, in planning, in preparation. You survive by controlling the game, not waiting for signs in the stars. That was some fantasy his mama might have whispered once before the world took her. But walking into understanding my plate felt like walking into a memory he didn't know he had. The second he saw her, Carter, everything in him paused. Not in a weak way, in a recognition way. Like something in his chest said, "There you are." Her skin was a warm golden brown, glowing like she was lit from within, and her eyes, they held entire histories, not pain, not just beauty, but purpose. Like she saw things people missed, like she was used to carrying things nobody else could hold. She looked up at him with curiosity, not fear. Most women hesitated when he stepped in a room. Too tall, too confident, too many rumors about who he used to be and what he might still be. Not her. She met him square, like she'd been expecting him. The moment hit different, and he didn't trust it. He sat at the far booth near the back wall, facing the whole room like always, tactically. His cousins cut up beside him, Rick already flirting with the waitress, Miles asking about Instagram shots, and Jalen busy tapping on his tablet like he wasn't in public. But Enzo? He couldn't take his eyes off Carter. She floated, laughing with her staff, dropping plates with grace, managing chaos with peace. Even her walk had rhythm, soft, grounded, like music you couldn't name, but needed to hear again. She was real, too real, which made her dangerous. He leaned back as she walked over to bring their plates. Grilled jerk salmon, sautéed kale, honey glazed sweet potatoes. That you? Yeah, he said, voice low. This place is yours? She nodded, a humble smile pulling at her lips. My baby. Every spice, every herb, every detail. Mine. He almost said something more. Almost asked why her presence felt like standing in a storm and finding peace in the eye of it. But he didn't, because that would have been too much, too fast. And he wasn't ready. As she walked away, his cousin Rick leaned in. Yo, what's up with you? He whispered. You've been reeling your feelings since we got here. Enzo's jaw clenched. She different? Rick raised a brow. Different like how? Enzo looked down at his plate, then back at Carter laughing behind the counter. Different like, she might be the reason I was built. That night, after the restaurant closed and the city lights dimmed behind his penthouse windows, Enzo poured a glass of bourbon and stood in silence. He had a dream when he was 15, one he never told anybody about. A woman wrapped in golden light, calling his name from the edge of a battlefield. She wasn't scared, but she was waiting. For him. Always for him. And tonight, he met her. She just didn't know who he was yet. But she would. Chapter 3. Whispers and Fire. Carter stepped behind the counter and gripped the edge of the stainless steel prep table like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Her fingers curled tight. The polished surface was cool beneath her palms, but her skin was burning, hot, electric, alive. What was that? She'd met thousands of customers since opening Understanding My Plate. Hustlers, college students, business owners, politicians, even a few rappers whose security detail made a bigger scene than the stars themselves. But none of them felt like him. She glanced over her shoulder. Enzo hadn't touched his food yet. He was watching her, calm, quiet, calculating. Not like a man trying to flirt, not like a man trying to impress, like a man who had seen her and was trying to remember where. Her chest tightened. Girl, Harper whispered beside her, eyes wide and glittering with questions. Why you looking like he just rearranged your soul? Carter didn't answer, because Harper wasn't wrong. By the time the last customer left, and the crew had finished the close-down routine, Carter moved like she was in a dream. She wiped down the last table herself, despite Kyle offering to handle it. She needed the quiet, the rhythm, something to drown out the hum in her ears that hadn't stopped since he walked in. Take a break, Carter, Logan called from the back. You've been grinding all day. I will, she murmured. The moment she was alone in the dining area, she dropped into a chair and let her head fall back. The restaurant, with its exposed brick walls, soft jazz playlist, and the lingering scent of cornbread and citrus cleanser, should have felt like her peace. Instead, her heartbeat grew louder. Thump, thump, thump. Then it happened. The air thickened. The lights dimmed. Her surroundings blurred. The room dissolved, and in its place, a battlefield, but not of this world. Ash fell from the sky like snow. The ground was cracked, burned, and soaked in blood. Figures, some human, some shadow, some unnameable, clashed in chaos. She stood in the center, wearing armor not of metal, but of light. Across the field she saw him. Enzo, but not as he was. He moved like a storm. His body glowed with gold veins, his eyes fierce with power. Shadow creatures tried to reach her, but he was there, cutting them down with hands glowing with energy that looked like fire wrapped in scripture. "Carter!" he shouted, voice thunderous. She tried to reach him, but her legs wouldn't move. Something was pulling her backward. A voice, whispered from somewhere behind the veil. "This time, Carter, you must choose to stay. Do not run from who you are." She gasped. Air rushed back into her lungs like a floodgate opened. She blinked, and the restaurant returned around her. Harper and Jasmine stood in front of her, faces filled with concern. "You zoned out again," Jasmine said gently. Carter looked at them, chest heaving. "He's not just a customer," she whispered. "Who?" Harper asked, but her eyes already knew. "Enzo," Carter said, voice trembling. "I saw him. Again. In the visions." "You serious?" Jasmine asked, arms folded tight. "What does that mean?" "I don't know yet," Carter whispered, shaking her head. "But something's coming. And he's tied to it." She stood slowly, feeling the weight of her destiny settle deeper into her bones. Outside, the wind howled, like the world had heard her speak it aloud, and agreed. Chapter 4. Streets, Codes, and Warnings. Back at the loft Enzo shared with his cousins on the north side, the atmosphere was low-lit and chill. Expensive couches, hardwood floors, and framed black and white portraits of Malcolm, Marcus, and Martin lined the walls like guardians. The air smelled like Hennessy, fresh weed, and ambition. But even with the music low and the mood relaxed, the tension in the room buzzed heavy. Enzo sat in the high-backed chair near the window, his mind still back in that restaurant. Her voice, her eyes, the way his chest had reacted before his brain even had time to process her name. He didn't know what the hell just happened, but it was changing him, and they could see it. "Okay," Rick said, standing up and pacing with a blunt in his hand. "Can we just say it now?" "You gone off, Shorty." Enzo didn't respond. Jalen didn't even look up from his laptop. "Confirmed. He's been quiet for 2 hours. That ain't normal." Miles smirked from where he was lying on the sectional scrolling his phone. "Bruh, he's thinking." "You know what that means. This ain't just some chick he trying to hit." Enzo's jaw flexed. "Y'all done?" he asked, voice low. "No," Rick snapped. "We not. 'Cause I know you. You don't move reckless with women. You don't even notice most of 'em. And now, one plate of kale and salmon later, you sitting here like you saw the face of God." Enzo didn't answer, because maybe he had. "I'm serious, Zoe," Rick continued. "We got moves to make. We got people watching us, contracts on the table, investors looking to partner. This ain't the time to be getting distracted." Enzo finally looked up, eyes slow and sharp. "You think I don't know that?" "I know you know that," Rick said, calmer now. "But the last time you got caught up in something emotional, we almost lost everything. And that girl? She feels like something big, bigger than food, bigger than looks. And things that big?" He paused. "They come with consequences." Jalen looked up then, voice flat. "Did you feel it too?" Enzo's gaze shifted to him. "Feel what?" "That pressure." Like something around her was shifting. Miles sat up. "Yeah, I felt it too, Loki. Like, yo, it felt like walking into a storm, but instead of thunder, it was peaceful. You know how weird that is?" Rick rolled his eyes. "Y'all sound like some damn poets." "I'm just saying. She fine, no doubt. She looked like she could heal trauma just by hugging you. But don't forget who we are, where we came from. People like us don't get peace like that. Not without a price, Enzo stood. All the noise, the analysis, the warnings, it didn't matter. Because in his soul, something had already clicked. I ain't distracted, he said firmly. I'm focused. And she ain't a problem. She's a path. Rick frowned. To what? Enzo didn't answer, because he didn't know yet. But whatever it was, Carter was at the center of it, and Enzo King never walked away from the center of anything. Chapter 5. Truth in Her Blood. The smell of white sage drifted through the air, blending with warm cinnamon and the faint trace of frankincense. The morning sun crept through the sheer curtains, casting long lines of light over the potted plants that lined the windowsill. Wind chimes clinked gently outside, moved by a breeze that seemed to carry messages. Carter sat cross-legged on a woven floor cushion in her mother's healing room, hands in her lap, heart pounding. The vision from the restaurant haunted her still. Enzo in battle, her blood, her power, the storm. Across from her, Amina Wells placed a glass jar of rosewater and a bundle of lavender on the low altar. Her energy was calm but deliberate, her long locks tied up into a loose knot, beads clicking softly when she moved. Dressed in earth tones, barefoot, skin glowing with the kind of peace only wisdom could bring, Amina was the kind of woman who felt like a knowing, not religious, spiritual. A woman who walked with the Most High and listened when the wind carried ancestors' voices through the trees. You saw it again, she said softly without turning around. Carter's lips parted, but no words came out. Her mother smiled faintly. Baby, you don't have to say a thing. Your energy walked into this room 10 steps ahead of your body. Amina turned to face her, her eyes deep with clarity and compassion. She sat beside Carter on the mat and placed a warm hand over her daughter's chest, right above her heart. The fire in you is stirring, she said. The visions are more than dreams, aren't they? Carter nodded slowly. I saw a war, Mama. Not a normal one. Something bigger, darker. And him, Enzo. He was there again, fighting, protecting me. Like it was his purpose. Amina breathed in slowly and let it go in silence. I knew this day would come, she said, gently rubbing small circles on Carter's sternum with her thumb. Since the day you were born. Carter looked at her, startled. You knew? Amina nodded, gaze steady. I was in ceremony, weeks before I found out I was pregnant with you. I was praying to the Most High, asking for direction, and a light filled my room, pure, still, and heavy with power. I couldn't see a face, but I felt it, the presence, the peace. And the message came clear. Your child will carry light into darkness. She will be chosen. You must prepare her, but not guide her. She must find her own way. Carter's hands trembled. So why didn't you tell me, Mama? Because wisdom don't always come through words, Amina said. It comes through experience. Your path is yours to walk. I raised you close to the earth, close to spirit, so that when your time came, you'd remember who you already were. Tears welled in Carter's eyes. But I'm scared. I didn't ask for this, Amina nodded, her own eyes wet with knowing. None of us ask for the work the Spirit assigns us, baby. But your soul agreed to this before you took your first breath. That strength you feel inside you now, that's not new. That's ancient. And it's rising again. They sat in silence for a moment, the air thick with truth. I keep seeing Enzo, Carter said. Every time I get a vision, he's there. Like, he's part of it. Part of me. Amina's brow arched slightly, not in surprise but in confirmation. Then he is, she said. Some souls are bound across lifetimes. When they find each other again, it's not a meeting. It's a remembering. But even soul ties can test you. Don't mistake protection for peace, and don't confuse love with destiny. Carter swallowed hard, staring at the small altar in the corner filled with crystals, prayer candles, and photos of women from their bloodline. "So what do I do?" she asked. Her mother leaned in and pressed their foreheads together. "You listen. To your spirit, to your dreams, to the silence between your thoughts. I'm here to protect your body, but only you can protect your soul." Outside, the chimes whispered in the wind again. The wind always came when truth was spoken. Carter closed her eyes and inhaled deeply, grounding herself. Something inside her had shifted, not broken, unlocked. And in the stillness of that room, surrounded by generations of wisdom, she heard the voice again, clearer now. Chapter 6. Digging into Destiny. The loft had gone quiet by midnight. Rick and Miles had gone their separate ways, each back to their own corners of the city, carrying whatever thoughts they had about the girl who had unexpectedly cracked Enzo's armor with a single glance. Enzo stood by the window long after the door closed, staring out at the skyline. The city pulsed beneath him like a living thing, full of noise and motion. But all he could think about was her, Carter Simone Wells. The name alone buzzed in his chest like prophecy. "Jay," he said without turning around. Jalen had just stepped into the hallway, backpack slung over one shoulder. He paused, adjusted his glasses, and waited. "I need you to look into her," Enzo said quietly. "Everything you can find, family, business, connections, background, all of it. I want to know who she really is." Jalen's brows lifted slightly. "You thinking she a threat?" Enzo turned then, eyes dark but focused. "I don't think anything yet. I feel something big, like she ain't just some girl running a restaurant." Jalen gave a slow nod. "All right, I'll run the data. Keep it tight," Enzo said. "Just for us." Jalen tapped the side of his temple. "Encrypted. You'll have it in the morning." The next morning, Enzo's main house. Enzo's main house, his real sanctuary, sat high in the hills just outside the city. A clean, black-on-black estate, wrapped in glass and stone. No neighbors, just silence, and space to think. He was out on the patio sipping black coffee when Jalen pulled up, laptop in hand. To Enzo's surprise, Rec followed behind him, already looking irritated. "I told him," Jalen said as they stepped into the open kitchen. "He didn't like that I kept it to myself." Rick crossed his arms. "If this chick is going to start affecting the way we move, I should know." Enzo didn't argue. He just motioned for Jalen to begin. Jalen opened the laptop, turned it toward them, and tapped a few keys. "Her name is Carter Simone Wells. 21. No criminal record. Graduated high school early. Culinary school scholarship. Started her restaurant 2 years ago with a business grant and a community development match fund. It's been booming ever since. Black-owned, soul food with a healthy twist. Deep local following, especially among elders and community leaders." Enzo leaned in. "What about her family?" Jalen clicked another folder. "Here's where it gets interesting." He pulled up a photo of Amina Wells, head wrapped, surrounded by candles, plants, and books. Her mother, Amina Wells, born and raised in Georgia, known in certain spiritual circles. Not a church lady, spiritual. Practices energy healing, herbalism, intuitive guidance. Locals call her a seer, though she doesn't advertise it. Rick scoffed. "So, voodoo?" Jalen shook his head. "Nah, it's deeper than that. More ancestral. Real roots. And check this. 3 different women in their bloodline were known in history for healing, protection, and visionary abilities. Documented by locals going back 3 generations, Enzo sat back slowly, rubbing his jaw. "So she's the latest one." "Looks that way," Jalen confirmed. And there's buzz about her having the gift too, though no one said it outright. The restaurant ain't just a business. It's a beacon. People go there to feel better. On more than just a food level. Rec frowned. Sounds like trouble. Enzo smiled. Slow, intrigued, unbothered. Sounds like power, he said. And I don't run from power. I partner with it. He stood up, grabbed his keys off the counter. We're going back, he said. All of us. Rick groaned. For what? You gonna try and decode her aura over collard greens? Enzo chuckled. I'm gonna ask her out. Jalen nearly choked. You serious? Dead serious, Enzo said, walking to the door. Something about her feels written, and I need to know if she feels it too. Rick and Jalen exchanged glances. Miles texted back, I'm in, before Enzo even finished sending the group message. As they pulled off in a convoy of matte black SUVs, Enzo's heart beat with a rhythm he hadn't felt in years. And whether Carter was ready or not, he was about to step fully into her world. Chapter 7. Soil and Signs. The earth between Carter's fingers felt sacred, damp, rich, and full of life, like the ancestors had whispered into the soil and made it bloom just for her. She sat barefoot in her mother's back garden, knees in the dirt, surrounded by rows of collards, okra, basil, lavender, and lemongrass, swaying gently in the Georgia breeze. Her mama's words still echoed in her chest like a quiet drumbeat. You must walk your own path. I can protect the vessel, but only you can protect the soul. Carter exhaled slowly and pressed her hands into the dirt, grounding herself. She needed this. The silence, the clarity, the peace that came from working with the earth, from feeling something grow because you cared enough to tend it. Sweat beaded at her temples as she reached for a small weed near the base of the collard greens. She moved slowly, intentionally. No headphones, no phone, just her breath and the wind. That's when she felt it. A shift. Like someone had stepped into her energy field before her ears ever registered footsteps. Her back straightened. Her eyes stayed on the garden bed, but her spirit was already alert. Then a deep, smooth voice with an ancient rhythm to it spoke from behind her. You touch the earth like someone who listens. Carter turned slowly. A man stood at the edge of the garden barefoot on the grass. Tall, broad-shouldered, smooth amber-brown skin, muscles defined beneath a loose white tunic and linen pants. His eyes were unlike anything she'd ever seen, light brown with flecks of copper, like they held the reflections of fires long burned out. And his accent. It didn't belong to any country she could place. He smiled gently. Peace, Carter. Her body stiffened. How do you know my name? She asked, standing slowly, still clutching her garden gloves. I've known many versions of you, he replied cryptically, across many lifetimes. This one is just the most important. Her heartbeat skipped. Are you one of them? One of the chosen? He chuckled low, voice like smooth thunder. I'm not here to walk your path. Only to remind you, there is one. Carter narrowed her eyes, heart pounding. Are you real? I'm as real as your gift, he said, as your breath. As your heartbeat when the truth draws near. She took a step back, unsure whether to run or bow. The man raised his hand slowly, palm open in peace. Your instincts will sharpen soon, he said. When they do, trust them. The visions you've seen are not warnings. They are memories. Lessons you're being offered again, for a chance to make a different choice. Carter's throat went dry. What choice? He smiled. It was kind, but haunting. You'll know when it arrives. And when it does, you must act from your spirit, not your fear. The wind picked up, swirling the smell of lavender and lemongrass around them like a cloak. She stepped forward. Wait, what's your name? He turned to go, walking barefoot through the grass like he belonged to it. He looked over his shoulder once, eyes glowing faintly in the sunlight. My name doesn't matter. Yours does. And then, just like smoke, he was gone. Carter stood frozen for a moment, staring at the spot he'd vanished from. The wind died down. The garden was still again, but deep inside her chest, a new sense of knowing had bloomed like a seed freshly planted. Whatever was coming was already unfolding, and her spirit would be her compass. Chapter 8. The Weight of Knowing. The warm morning sun followed Carter all the way to her car, like it knew her secret. After showering and slipping into high-waisted jeans, a soft cream blouse, and her favorite wooden earrings, she felt lighter. Full, like something had been placed inside her during her time in the garden. Something sacred. The mysterious man, the accent, the message, "Trust your spirit," still echoed in her bones. She pulled into the parking lot of Understanding My Plate, just before the late breakfast crowd. The restaurant already buzzed with life. She could see Kyle and Logan setting up the patio tables, Harper lighting Palo Santo near the front register, and Jasmine wiping down the windows with her usual no-nonsense precision. The moment she stepped out of the car, they lit up. "Hey, sunshine," Harper called, flashing a smile. "You look like you had a whole therapy session with the ancestors." Carter smirked, hugging her. "Something like that." "You good?" Jasmine asked, handing her a hot rag. "You disappeared yesterday." Carter just nodded, her tone grounded. "Yeah, I just needed to listen. To myself. To God." To the dirt, Kyle popped his head through the open front door. "Well, good thing you're back. You know these people act like they can't live without your magic hands in that kitchen. I am the seasoning," Carter teased, walking in. Inside, the dining room was already gleaming, the tables arranged perfectly. The smell of rosemary, smoked paprika, and warm butter wafted through the air. She passed through the kitchen, checking on the greens and oxtails like muscle memory. But her thoughts kept drifting back to him. Enzo. Would he come back? And if he did, was she ready for whatever came with him? An hour after the doors opened, the steady hum of conversation filled the room, plates clinking, soul music playing softly in the background. Carter stood near the back counter, jotting down an order, when the front door opened, and time hit pause. Again. Enzo King entered the room like he owned the air around him. Dressed in a fitted black short-sleeve button-down, gold links on his wrist, and dark denim that somehow looked expensive. His energy didn't crash. It rolled in, thick and slow like honey with thunder underneath. His cousins followed, Rick with a fitted hat low over his brow, Miles with a knowing smirk, Jalen scrolling on his phone, but fully aware. Conversation stopped. For 2 full seconds, every eye turned to them. And then, like a ripple in a pond, life resumed. But not for Carter. Her heart tapped a steady rhythm in her chest, but not from fear. This wasn't coincidence. This was alignment. They took the same booth near the back as before. Logan raised an eyebrow across the room, but didn't say a word. Jasmine leaned close and whispered, "Want me to take their order?" Carter shook her head slowly. "Nah, I got it." She untied her apron, checked her reflection in the chrome surface of the coffee machine, and took a breath. If she was going to walk this path, she had to face it, and right now, that meant facing him. Enzo looked up just as she approached. For a moment, the whole table quieted. Even Rick stopped tapping his foot. Carter smiled, cool, soft, but firm. "Back again?" she asked, pen and pad in hand. Enzo leaned back in his seat, his eyes slowly scanning her face like he was searching for a secret. "Couldn't stay away?" he said simply. "Thought I'd let the food work on me twice before I called it an addiction." She laughed lightly. Well, let's see if this round earns the title. As she wrote down their orders, oxtails for Reek, shrimp and grits for Mondils, red snapper with garlic kale for Jalen, she could feel Enzo watching her, like he was studying the energy around her, like she was pulling something out of him just by existing. She turned to him last. And for you? His voice was low. You know what I want? Carter raised a brow. What's that? He smiled faintly. Whatever you think I need. That stopped her. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she scribbled something on her pad, tucked it into her apron, and said, All right then. Let's see if you trust me to feed your spirit. She turned, walking away, aware of the silence behind her. Behind her, Jalen muttered, Yo, y'all feel that? Rick leaned on the table. Feel what? The shift, Jalen said. She ain't normal. Enzo didn't say anything. He already knew. Chapter 9. Spice and Signals. Carter slipped through the swinging kitchen doors with practiced ease, but her pulse still thumped like she'd just run 3 flights of stairs. She leaned briefly against the cool stainless steel fridge, eyes closed, trying to gather herself. Whatever you think I need, Enzo had said, and somehow she knew he wasn't just talking about food. She opened her eyes and walked to the prep counter, mind already forming a plate that matched the energy he carried. Not what he wanted, what he needed. Braised lamb shank, slow cooked in rosemary, garlic, and smoked paprika. Sweet potato mash, whipped with coconut milk and cinnamon. A side of sautéed collard greens kissed with chili oil and fresh ginger. Soulful, grounding, with just enough heat to remind him he was still alive. She wanted the food to touch his spirit, not just his stomach. Jasmine popped her head into the kitchen, backpack already slung over one shoulder. I'm out. Class in 30. Carter gave her a quick wave. Text me if Professor Harris starts talking in parables again. Jasmine smirked. You better be texting me when Enzo King finally breaks that quiet storm act and asks you out properly. Carter rolled her eyes, but the blush creeping up her neck betrayed her. Harper walked in right behind, holding a tray. So we just not going to talk about how you served him yourself when we know Kyle was right there? Y'all act like I never serve customers, Carter replied, checking the lamb as it simmered in the Dutch oven. You don't when they look like that, Logan called from the doorway, leaning on the frame like he'd been waiting for a cue. I mean, come on. You floated over there. Didn't even walk regular. Carter tossed a towel at him. Go polish the silverware or something. Kyle stepped into the back, half laughing. We're just saying. It's not a crime to be interested. We're your people. We noticed things. Carter gave a soft sigh. It's not just interest, y'all. There's something else. When I'm near him, it feels like my soul's leaning forward, like it recognizes him. Harper's eyes softened. You felt it too, huh? That shift in the air when he walked in? Carter nodded. Kyle crossed his arms. Well, since we're being honest, I ran his name. Everyone turned. You what? Harper asked, nearly dropping her cup. I didn't dig deep, Kyle said. Just surface level stuff. Enzo King. Used to be in the streets heavy with his cousins. Made real money fast. But a few years ago, he flipped it all. Investments, businesses, tech ventures. Dude's smart. Dangerous smart. He's clean now, legally speaking. But I'd bet my next paycheck he's still got his foot in both worlds. Carter stirred the greens slowly. So he's... what? A reformed hustler with angel eyes? Kyle shrugged. I'm saying be careful. Men like that don't usually change unless something makes them. Carter looked up, voice firm but calm. Maybe I'm that something. The kitchen went quiet for a beat, Harper letting out a slow, impressed exhale. Then Logan cracked a grin. And that's the Carter I know. She plated the food carefully, tucking a sprig of fresh thyme next to the lamb, wiped the rim of the plate, and handed it to Harper. "Can you take this out?" she asked. Harper raised a brow. "You sure?" Carter hesitated, then shook her head. "No, I need to feel his reaction." Harper grinned. "Girl, I live for this movie." As Carter carried the tray out, her heart steady and her spirit buzzing, she knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just another customer. This wasn't even just a date. This was the start of something divine. Chapter 10. Study Her Fire. The clatter of plates, soft jazz floating in the background, and the low hum of conversation surrounded Enzo like white noise, but his focus was locked forward, on her. Carter. She moved toward the table like she carried gravity in her hips, steady, intentional, not rushing for anyone. The tray in her hands didn't shake once. Enzo watched her every step, the sway of her earrings, the confidence in her walk. She wasn't dressed to impress. She didn't have to. She had presence, the kind you couldn't fake. He sat back slightly in the booth, not saying a word as she placed a plate of oxtails in front of Rick, shrimp and grits in front of Miles, and red snapper with kale before Jalen. Then she turned to him, and time slowed again. She set his plate down carefully. Braised lamb shank, sweet potato mash, collards, greens gleaming with something spicy and alive. "Just went with what I felt you needed," she said, soft but sure. Enzo raised his eyes to hers. "You always listen that well?" he asked. She gave the faintest smile. "Only when spirit's speaking loud enough." And just like that, she was gone. Back through the kitchen doors, her energy trailing behind like a song he couldn't get out of his head. Miles exhaled hard and dug in. "Yo, this food is spiritual. This shrimp just unlocked a childhood memory I didn't even know I had." Jalen was already halfway through his fish, nodding like he was analyzing data in his mouth. "She don't cook like a chef. She cooks like she's feeding somebody's soul." Even Rick had to give it up. I wanted to hate it just to keep it real, but this oxtail damn near made me emotional. Enzo didn't say anything. He picked up his fork, carved into the lamb, and took one slow bite. It wasn't just good. It was intentional. It told a story. It was everything she'd said it was. Not what he wanted, but what he needed. And he didn't trust that. Didn't trust her yet. He chewed slowly, eyes still on the kitchen door. His instincts had never failed him. Something about Carter made him feel like he was standing at a crossroads, between power and peace, between control and surrender, and Enzo didn't surrender. Not to anyone. Still, he wanted to know her, but not the way people normally did. He wanted to watch her, study her, see how she moved in the world when no one was performing. See if that light in her eyes stayed lit when life wasn't golden. If the power in her presence held up when she wasn't in her element. "Yo, you good?" Rick asked, side-eyeing him between bites. "You real quiet over there." Enzo leaned back, cleaned his fork slow, and nodded once. "Food's perfect." Jalen raised an eyebrow. "And the chef?" Enzo didn't answer. He didn't need to. In his mind, the next few weeks were already forming. A plan. He'd show up randomly, see her outside the restaurant, maybe run into her at the farmer's market, a bookstore, maybe just trail her from a distance for a while, see who she really was, if she was grounded or just gifted, if her light came from within, or if she borrowed it when needed. He wasn't ready to pull her into his world, not until he knew if she could stand in it. And if she could, that would change everything. Chapter 11. Moving through her world. Enzo had learned long ago that patience wasn't passive. It was power. In the streets, in business, in survival, watching was half the game. People always showed you who they were when they didn't know you were looking. So that's what he did. He watched Carter. For 3 weeks, he moved in silence. He watched her garden at her mama's house, knees in the dirt, hair tied in a wrap, talking to the soil like it had feelings. Some mornings, her mama was beside her, offering stories, laughter, healing energy that wrapped around them like incense. Other times, her father sat on the porch, sipping from a clay mug, nodding in rhythm with Carter's thoughts, even when she didn't say a word. They were close, real close. The kind of family you didn't see much anymore. A quiet bond stitched together with faith and intention. He followed her to farmers' markets tucked into corners of the city he didn't even know existed. Vendors with handmade soaps, raw honey, and fresh herbs Carter somehow knew the names and healing properties of. She moved like she belonged everywhere, smiled at strangers, spoke with elders like she carried 1,000 Sundays in her voice. He saw her with her people, too, Harper, Kyle, Logan, and Jasmine, laughing at inside jokes, vibing over soul music and smoothies in the park. Some days, she led community cleanups with a group of teens. Other days, she handed out hot meals to unhoused folks like it was her regular Tuesday. She was present, not performative, and Enzo was pulled in deeper than he wanted to admit. But it wasn't until he saw her, one rainy afternoon, ducking into a coffee shop near Auburn Avenue, with a book tucked under her arm and her curls full and wild, that he broke his own rule. He parked across the street, heartbeat slow and steady. This wasn't strategy anymore. This was intention. The bell over the cafe door jingled softly as Enzo stepped inside. The scent of cinnamon and espresso wrapped around him like memory. Carter was tucked into a corner booth, nursing a lavender latte and scribbling something in a notebook. For a second, he just stood there, watching her. She was humming softly to herself. He couldn't make out the song, but it sounded like peace. And then her eyes flicked up, mid-sip, and locked on him. Recognition flared, but she didn't flinch. She just smiled, cool and knowing, like she'd been expecting him. He walked over slowly. "You always write in public?" he asked, nodding toward the notebook. Carter closed it gently and looked up at him with amusement dancing in her eyes. "You always follow women across the city for weeks before saying hi?" Enzo froze. For once. Caught. But Carter just chuckled and gestured to the seat across from her. "Sit down, Enzo. Let's talk." So he did. And for the first time since he first saw her, Enzo stopped watching Carter from a distance and stepped into her light. Chapter 12. Coffee and Clarity. Enzo settled into the booth across from Carter, the leather seat creaking beneath his weight. The rain whispered against the windows behind him, soft and rhythmic, like the city itself was holding its breath. Carter stirred her lavender latte slowly, watching him with eyes that felt like they had already seen him in another life. She didn't speak right away, and neither did he. But the silence didn't feel empty. It felt intentional. She leaned back. "So, you've been following me." Enzo didn't bother denying it. "Yeah." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Why?" He took a breath, eyes scanning her face. "Because I needed to see you off the clock. Without the apron, without the heat of the kitchen, I needed to know if what I felt in that restaurant was real. And," Enzo tilted his head, "it's real, but it's also dangerous." Carter's brow lifted, amused. "Dangerous how?" "Because people like me don't get near people like you without something breaking." There was no arrogance in his tone, just truth. Carter rested her hands around her cup, warm and steady. "And what exactly are you, Enzo King?" He paused, the weight of his name settling between them. She said it with no fear, No judgment, just curiosity. I'm someone who built a life out of dust, he said finally, raised in chaos. Survived things most people don't walk away from. I've been a protector, a boss, a weapon, but I don't know if I've ever just been a man. Carter nodded slowly. And you think being around me is going to make you soft? No, he said. I think it might make me real. That made her stop, made her stare. She leaned in. I don't need a perfect man. I don't even need a safe one, but I do need someone who knows what they're walking into. Because I'm not just running a restaurant. I'm not just growing collards and quoting spirit. Enzo's gaze sharpened. I know. Do you? She asked, voice low now. Because what's coming for me is spiritual. It's bigger than the hood, bigger than the streets, bigger than any empire you built. It's divine warfare. Enzo didn't flinch. That's why I've been watching. I had to know if you were grounded, if your light was real. And now I do. Carter's voice dropped to a whisper. And now? He reached across the table, not touching her, just letting his fingers rest on the wood. Close, but not crossing the line. Now I want to earn the right to stand beside it. She stared at his hand, then up into his eyes. You don't strike me as the kind of man who asks for permission. I don't, he said, but I respect power. And what you got, that's not just beauty or charm or kitchen magic. He paused. That's kingdom work. And I won't move sloppy around that. They sat there for a moment, everything unspoken sitting between them like a third presence. Then Carter leaned back, breath steady. You want to watch? Fine, but sooner or later you're going to have to step in. I will, Enzo promised. When it's time. She smiled again, smaller, wiser. I'll know when you're ready. He nodded. So will I. And just like that, the war between fate and fear lost its first battle. Two people sat in a cafe, soaked in rain and clarity. No titles, no roles, just two souls unpeeling the layers of who they might become, together. Chapter 13. Smoke in the distance. Enzo's world didn't run on emotions. It ran on control. So after leaving the cafe, after leaving her, he did what he always did. He put everything back in its box. He returned to the compound, a gated, discreet estate tucked behind tall trees and silence in East Point. It was where the real work happened, away from the clean offices and polished storefronts. It was where old associates checked in and new players auditioned to get close. And tonight? There was tension in the air. Jalen was waiting in the security room when Enzo stepped in, multiple camera feeds blinking across the wall. She's still in the coffee shop, Jalen said without looking away. You were in there 42 minutes. You time me now? Enzo asked, eyebrow raised. Jalen smirked. I clock what matters. She matters. Enzo grunted. Anything else? Jalen's fingers flew across the keyboard. Yeah, something weird. We got movement. Old ghost poking around Enzo's jaw tightened. Names? Jalen nodded to the monitor and clicked open a paused frame. A grainy, still image of a man with narrow eyes and a scar under his left cheek filled the screen. Silas Monroe. Enzo's voice dropped cold. I thought he was locked up. Out on technicality, Jalen said. 2 weeks ago. Been moving quiet, real quiet. But this? He pointed to the screen. That's the south camera from our textile warehouse. He wasn't supposed to know where that was. Enzo stared at the image, every muscle in his body going still. Silas was old business, from the days when Enzo had both feet in the dirt. A former ally turned threat. The kind of man who smiled at you while holding a knife behind his back. Smart, but greedy. And when Enzo went legit, Silas took it personal. Too personal. Rick burst into the room, clearly already briefed. He looked from the monitor to Enzo. Told you he wasn't done, Rick said. Told you the minute you went soft, they'd start smelling blood. Enzo didn't flinch. This ain't about softness. No, Rick asked. You've been distracted, Zoe. Eyes off the game, heart somewhere it's never been. And now look, vultures circling. I'm not distracted, Enzo said calmly. I'm aware. There's a difference. Rick crossed his arms. So what's the play? Enzo stared at the screen a moment longer before replying. We let him keep watching. Jalen raised a brow. What? Why? Because he's not here for us, Enzo said, voice dropping. He doesn't know it yet, but he's watching the wrong piece on the board. Jalen frowned. You think he's watching Carter? I don't think, Enzo said. I feel it. The room went quiet, because that changed everything. Carter wasn't just a woman anymore. She was a target. And in Enzo's world, targets didn't get grace. They got hit. He stood slowly, eyes cold and sharp. I'll handle Silas. Quietly. We don't move. Yet Rick nodded, but his expression was tight. And her? Enzo's jaw clenched. I keep watching. But not from the outside this time. He looked toward the monitors one last time, then back at his crew. She's not just a woman I'm drawn to. She's a trigger for something bigger than us. And if they're circling her, then they've already chosen the battlefield. Jalen let out a low whistle. So we at war? Enzo's stare was deadly calm. No, we're preparing for one. Chapter 14. Warnings in Flesh and Spirit. The last sips of her lavender latte had gone cold, but Carter didn't move. She sat in the coffee shop for a full 30 minutes after Enzo left, letting the energy of their conversation settle inside her like tea leaves steeping in hot water. Her heart was steady, but her thoughts were buzzing, not chaotic, just alive. Enzo had sat across from her with truth in his eyes, and now that she'd seen him in that rawness, there was no putting the feeling back in the box. She had no clue where this path led, but for the first time in her life, the mystery didn't scare her. It called her. She gathered her things, notebook tucked under her arm, tote slung over her shoulder. The rain had lightened to a mist, soft and gray as she stepped out onto the sidewalk. The world outside felt off, like something had shifted. The moment she turned to head toward her car, someone bumped into her, hard enough to knock her off balance a step. Carter turned instinctively, hand up. Oh, I'm so sorry. The woman standing in front of her was stunning. High cheekbones, flawless skin, tall, slim, dressed like she had somewhere expensive to be. But her eyes, cold, calculated. Carter's apology dissolved on her tongue. You Carter, right? The woman said, voice low and sharp like a blade wrapped in velvet. Carter blinked, still adjusting to the vibe shift. Yeah. I thought so, the woman said, folding her arms. You got that look. Carter's brow furrowed. What look? That I'm too spiritual to check my boundaries look. Carter straightened, calm but alert. I'm sorry. Do we know each other? The woman stepped closer, the scent of her perfume too sweet to be friendly. I'm Enzo's girlfriend. Been that way. Still that way, she said flatly. So I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but sitting up in coffee shops with somebody else's man? She cocked her head. That's bold. Carter's breath caught, her body rooted in place. Whatever warmth she'd been carrying from her talk with Enzo vanished like morning fog. I didn't know he was... Carter started. I don't care, the woman snapped. I'm not here to hear you explain how innocent it was, or how you were just talking. I'm just here to make it real clear. Stay in your lane. Carter stared at her for a long second. There was no rage in her chest, no defense, just a sudden, sharp disappointment blooming behind her ribs. She stepped back, voice calm. "Thanks for letting me know," she said. "Have a good day." The woman gave her a smug once-over, like she'd won something, and then walked away. Carter stood there for a moment, barely breathing. Was this a test? Was Enzo lying? Playing? Or was something else off? She didn't know. But one thing was certain. Spirit doesn't lie. And whatever that woman was, her energy hadn't matched truth. It had matched interference. Still, Carter's peace had cracked, just a little, and something in the air, just beneath the breeze, laughed. Chapter 15. Street Chess. 10:43 p.m. Oakland City Station, West End, Atlanta. The street smelled like wet pavement and old lies. The city was quiet, but not asleep, just watching, just waiting. Enzo stood beneath the flickering streetlight across from a half-abandoned liquor store, hands in his jacket pockets, head low. This wasn't a show of strength. It was a message. I'm not afraid of you. And just as expected, like a bad habit that never stayed buried, Silas Monroe emerged from the shadows, hoodie up, cigarette dangling from the corner of his mouth like some old-school gangster in a movie that ended in blood. They locked eyes from across the cracked pavement. Silas smirked. "Well, damn. Word on the street said you went corporate." Enzo didn't blink. "Funny. I heard you went quiet because your name started collecting bodies instead of respect." Silas stepped closer, his gait loose, cocky, like he still believed he was playing the same game they used to run. "You really came out here by yourself?" he asked, circling Enzo slightly. "No cousins? No suits? Just that old I'm still him energy?" Enzo turned slowly to face him head on. "You've been poking around my businesses, my warehouses, watching from a distance. Gotta keep up with old friends," Silas said. "You're an inspiration." "No," Enzo said flatly. "I'm a reminder of what happens when people like you forget who taught them how to eat." Silas laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "And yet, here you are, looking real pressed over a little surveillance. It wasn't my businesses you were watching yesterday." Silas paused, just half a beat too long. Enzo caught it. "You watching her?" he asked, voice low, deadly calm. Silas tossed the cigarette and shrugged. "She's got a glow. Community darling, soft-spoken, walks like peace. That's a rare combo. Makes people pay attention." Enzo stepped forward, the air between them thinning. "You put her name in your mouth again, Silas," he said, "and I'll erase every one of your fake-ass connections from this city like they never existed." Silas narrowed his eyes. "You getting soft, Zoe? I thought the king didn't catch feelings." "I don't," Enzo said. "I catch threats." He leaned in, voice sharp as broken glass. "You think I ain't still capable of darkness just because I learned how to walk in light?" "Try me." Silas flinched, not outwardly, but Enzo saw the shift, saw the moment his mask cracked just enough. "Now," Enzo said, stepping back, "you get one chance to walk away. But if you show up anywhere near her again, if I feel your shadow in her presence, I won't talk next time." Silas looked at him hard, then gave a slow, sarcastic bow. "Aight," he said. "Message received." But Enzo didn't turn to leave. He stood still and watched until Silas disappeared back into the dark. 11:17 p.m. Enzo got in his car, pulled onto the main road, and exhaled just once. This wasn't about territory anymore. This was about Carter. And whether she knew it or not, something had already chosen her as a key player in a game most people didn't even know was being played. He'd warned Silas. Now he had to make sure Carter stayed untouched by the war trying to wrap itself around her. And that meant staying close, whether she wanted him there or not. Chapter 16. Eyes in the crowd. A few days had passed, and Carter kept doing what she always did, living. She planted new lavender and basil in her mama's garden. She rolled out fresh menu items at the restaurant, catfish baked in coconut milk and cumin, and a sweet potato skillet that had the regulars swearing she was anointed. She checked in with the elders who stopped by just to feel her peace, hugged neighborhood kids, restocked sea moss at the co-op, and kept smiling like the world wasn't pulling something heavy beneath her feet. But in quiet moments, in corners and shadows, she felt it. That familiar ripple in the air, that steady hum in her chest. He was still watching her. It was Saturday night, and her house was filled with laughter, music, and the scent of spiced wine simmering on the stove. Carter sat curled up on her couch, Harper beside her, while Logan DJ'd from the kitchen with a speaker he barely knew how to use. Kyle was half snoozing in the armchair, and Jasmine, always the realist, was organizing everyone's plates, like she didn't trust anyone else to do it right. "You heard from Tall, Dark, and Brooding?" Harper asked suddenly, sipping her wine. Carter didn't answer right away. Everyone looked over. "I haven't seen him. Officially," she said, choosing her words carefully. "But I've felt him." Jasmine raised a brow. "You felt him?" "He's been following me," Carter admitted casually, like she was talking about the weather. "For a few weeks now." "Girl, what?" Logan leaned in. "And you just let that slide?" Carter smiled faintly. "The first time I sensed it, I thought I was tripping. The second time, I saw him, half hidden behind a vendor booth at the market. He didn't say anything. Just watched. But something told me not to react. Just let it be. So I did." Kyle shook his head. "You letting a man shadow you like a spirit and calling it intuition?" Carter turned to him. "Not everything is danger, Kyle. Some things are waiting. Some things are testing you before they make a move." Harper sighed dreamily. "That sounds poetic and unhealthy." Then Carter added, "But we did talk. At the coffee shop. That got everyone quiet." Carter recounted it all. The calm, intense conversation. The way he looked at her. How he didn't flirt, didn't manipulate, just laid his truth out, like he was offering her something heavy and sacred. "Okay," Jasmine said slowly. "So why the mood?" Carter looked down into her cup. "Because when I was leaving the cafe, I ran into a woman who said she was his girlfriend." The whole room froze. "She said they were still together. Told me to stay in my lane." "Wait, what?" Harper sat upright. Carter nodded. "I didn't argue. Just walked away. But it cracked something." Kyle leaned forward. "You think she was telling the truth?" Carter shrugged. "I don't know. Her energy was off, like forced, not real. But she knew my name." Harper looked at her with concern. "And how do you feel?" Carter hesitated. "Split. Part of me thinks he's not that kind of man. The other part? It knows I barely know him at all." Logan finally spoke, serious now. "Then maybe it's time he stops watching you and starts showing up." A few more days passed. Carter kept moving. She wasn't one to let confusion root her in place. She returned to her rhythm, the garden, the restaurant, her walks through the community. She stayed grounded. And she waited. A few days later, Carter was back at the farmer's market, a basket on her arm, sunlight in her curls, and that same peaceful hum following her footsteps. She was examining bundles of sage when she felt it, that familiar shift in the atmosphere. She looked up. Enzo, walking toward her, steady and sure. This time, she didn't wait. They talked as they walked through the market, bantering about which vegetables were overpriced and how Enzo didn't trust herbal medicine. They moved slowly, like the crowd parted just for them. Eventually, they found a small cafe on the edge of the market and slid into a quiet table under a vine-covered awning. They ordered tea, split a plate of lemon rosemary biscuits and honey butter, and Carter decided now. She sipped her drink, looked at him, and said, "There's something I need to ask you." Enzo set his cup down, meeting her eyes immediately. "A woman," Carter said, "outside the coffee shop. She didn't give me her name, but she said she was your girlfriend. Tall, skin like brown sugar, bone-straight hair, hazel eyes." Enzo's expression shifted, just for a second, and Carter saw it. "You know who I'm talking about," she said. Enzo leaned back, jaw tightening. "Yeah, I do." He shook his head slowly, processing. "Her name's Nyla." Carter waited. "She's not my girlfriend," he said. "She's my ex. We haven't been together in over 2 years. Last I heard, she moved out west, got caught up in some messy business, scams, secrets, always 3 steps ahead of consequences. We didn't end on good terms." "Then how did she know about me?" Carter asked. Enzo stared at the table for a moment, then met her gaze again. "She's watching me," he said, "just like I've been watching you. And if she's back in the city, that means she's not here by accident." His voice dropped, low and tight. "She's playing a game. And now that I know she approached you, I'm going to find out exactly what she's after." Carter sat back, absorbing his words, her fingers wrapping around her mug. "I didn't believe her," she said softly, "but it still made me question everything." Enzo nodded. "I get it. And I hate that it put even an ounce of doubt in your spirit. But I'm not hiding, Carter. Not from her. Not from you. I just didn't know she was even in the picture until now." Carter was quiet for a moment. Then, "So what now?" "Now," Enzo said, eyes locked on hers, "I shut it down. And I make sure nobody, not past or present, messes with your peace again." And Carter believed it, even if she didn't know what it would cost him to keep it. Chapter 17. Ghosts in Motion. Monday, 9:12 p.m. The Compound, East Point, Atlanta. The room smelled like leather, cologne, and consequence. Enzo stood at the head of the long table in the private conference room, tucked deep inside his compound. High ceilings, tinted windows, and security tech humming low beneath the silence. His crew, Rick, Jalen, and Miles, sat around him, watching as Jalen's laptop streamed a flickering surveillance feed onto the mounted screen. The woman on the screen, Nyla Monroe, tall, fine, trouble wrapped in silk. She moved through downtown like she owned it, slipping in and out of bars, boutique hotels, and underground lounges too exclusive for the average player. Always alone. Never too long in one place. But she wasn't hiding. She was baiting. "She's too comfortable," Enzo muttered. "Too bold." Jalen nodded. "We clocked her at 3 different high-end spots in the last 48 hours. No known employment, no car. But she's dripping in designer and posting soft flexes to a burner Instagram. She wants to be seen, just not by us." "She came back to be messy," Rick growled. "I knew she wasn't done." Miles leaned forward, fingers tapping the table. "But the timing ain't random. She pops up right after you connect with Carter?" "Nah. She's back for a reason." Jalen flipped to another feed. This one grainy, pulled from a camera across the street from a dimly lit parking lot near Bankhead. "Now here's where it gets interesting," he said. The image zoomed in. Silas, standing outside an unmarked building, arms folded, talking to someone just out of frame. Jalen clicked again. The frame shifted. Neela, wearing a hoodie this time, less glam, but unmistakable. Enzo's jaw clenched. "They've linked up." Jalen nodded grimly. "Not just linked. They met twice this week. We haven't caught audio yet, but from body language, they're negotiating, or she's selling him something." "She's not stupid," Rick muttered. She knows Silas still holds grudges. If she's feeding him intel about you. Or Carter, Miles added quietly. The room went still. Enzo stared at the screen, his reflection mirrored in the glass. He hadn't brought Carter into his world, not officially, but his enemies had already seen the bond forming. And in their world, bonds were leverage. You want me to follow her personally? Rick asked. We can run shadow ops. Quiet, deep. Let her slip up. Enzo shook his head. No, she knows us too well. She'd feel it. Jalen leaned back. So what's the move? Enzo took a breath, eyes still locked on Nyla's image. We don't follow her, he said. We set up a trap for her. Rick grinned. Now that's the Enzo I know. And Silas? Miles asked. I want eyes on him 24/7, Enzo said. I don't care if he's brushing his teeth or lighting a blunt. I want a full pattern readout. What time he moves, where, and who's backing him. He's trying to reestablish his crew, but the streets don't belong to him no more. Jalen began typing rapidly. Already syncing cameras. We'll tag his burner phones next. And Nyla? Miles asked again. Enzo's voice was low. She doesn't get to move in my city like a ghost. Not anymore. She stepped into this like she forgot who taught her how to play. Now I have to remind her. Tuesday, 2:41 a.m. Back in his penthouse, Enzo stood by the window, the Atlanta skyline a blur of red and gold below him. In his chest, the war had already begun. Carter was no longer just a light in his life. She was a target in someone else's plan. And Nyla wasn't acting out of jealousy. She was executing something bigger, something strategic. Enzo's mind moved like a machine, calculating steps ahead, anticipating betrayal, preparing for war. And deep in his gut, he knew Silas wasn't the real threat. He was the distraction. And Nyla? She was the one pulling strings. But what game was she really playing? And why now? Chapter 18. Half-Spoken Truths. Tuesday, 11:18 a.m. Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. The cafe was tucked into a quiet block, far from the city's noise. Brick walls, pressed tin ceilings, warm espresso, and steam curling into the sunlight that poured through old windows. Enzo sat at a corner table, eyes on the door, jaw locked, hands wrapped loosely around a mug he hadn't touched. She was late. She made people wait the same way the earth waits for rain. On her time. When Carter finally walked in, the soft jingle of the bell over the door somehow cut through the hum of voices and clinking cups. She wore a light denim jacket over a flowing skirt, curls wrapped in a deep burgundy scarf. Her walk was unbothered, unrushed, but her eyes, sharp, watching, like she already knew he was holding something back. Morning, she said as she slid into the seat across from him. Enzo nodded once. Appreciate you coming. I figured if you finally asked me to sit down instead of lurking behind plant stalls, it must be important. He cracked a faint smile. She was still sharp, still untouchable in the ways that mattered most. I need to talk to you, he said, about some things I'm starting to connect. Carter's gaze didn't move. Go on. Enzo leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice low. You remember the woman who approached you outside the coffee shop? She nodded, slow. You said her name was Nyla. She's working with someone. Someone who's been making quiet moves in the city. Silas Carter blinked once. Silas? He's not important, yet. But he wants to be. And Nyla? She's either feeding him information or she's running her own play. Maybe both. Carter tilted her head. And I'm involved in this. How? Enzo didn't answer right away. He just looked at her, really looked. Then he said, because whatever this is, they've been watching you, not just me. Carter's breath caught, but she didn't flinch. Watching me, she repeated softly. Why? I don't know, he said. But I know when people circle something quietly, It's because they see value or vulnerability. You think I'm a weakness? She asked, voice calm but edged. No, Enzo said, eyes narrowing. I think you're a key. The silence after that sat between them like something holy or haunted. Carter stared out the window for a moment, watching leaves drift from a nearby tree. You still not telling me everything, she said. I know. She looked back at him. Why not? Because some things aren't mine to say, Enzo replied. They're yours to see, to feel, and when you do, I'll be here. A long pause. Then Carter nodded, just once. All right, she said. Then I guess I better keep my eyes open. Enzo's voice dropped just above a whisper. Keep your spirit open. They sat in silence again. Just two souls in the middle of a story that hadn't revealed all its pages yet. And outside, somewhere in the distance, the shadows shifted, watching, waiting, whispering the next move. Chapter 19. The Quiet Blade. Tuesday, 3:03 p.m., West End. Unlisted apartment. The blinds were drawn tight, casting horizontal shadows across the living room floor. Sunlight tried to slip in, but even it knew better than to press too hard. The space was minimalist, white walls, clean lines, not a single picture on display. Only two things made it feel lived in: a velvet armchair and Nyla. She sat with one leg tucked beneath her, swirling a glass of pomegranate wine as she scrolled slowly through her burner phone. The screen glowed with photos of Carter, harmless, happy photos taken by someone who didn't understand what they were truly capturing. Nyla studied each one like a general reviewing a battlefield. She didn't hate Carter. In fact, that was the part she respected most. Carter wasn't loud, wasn't flashy, but she had weight. People moved differently around her, like she reminded them of something they forgot they were worthy of. And that kind of energy was dangerous, especially when men like Enzo started orbiting it. There was a knock at the door, 2 short taps, then silence. She didn't move right away, just reached beneath the side table and tapped the concealed trigger. The hallway camera feed appeared on a slim wall panel across the room. Silas. Right on time. She unlocked the door, letting it swing open with a hiss of old hinges. Silas stepped in, looking like a rumor that refused to die. Faded black hoodie, gold fronts flashing behind a crooked grin, and eyes that didn't blink unless they needed to. You always sit in the dark like a damn villain? He asked. I move better in shadows, Nyla replied, unbothered. What you got for me? Silas flopped onto the couch, tossing a USB drive onto the coffee table between them. Patterns. Enzo's compound, Jalen's network. Some weak spots Nyla didn't reach for it. I'm not interested in his weak spots. I already know those. Silas raised a brow. Then what do you want? Nyla sipped her wine, eyes cool. I want her. You still on that? He scoffed. You could have been replaced her. You know how many chicks. I don't want to replace her, Nyla snapped, voice like a blade wrapped in silk. I want to understand what she is. Why Enzo's pulled to her like gravity. Why I feel that heat in my chest every time I see her, like she's walking around with pieces of something I was promised. Silas leaned forward, amused now. You sound like this is spiritual. It is, she whispered. You ever stand next to someone and feel them pull energy from the air like it was theirs to command? Silas shrugged. I've stood next to you. She smiled at that, but it didn't reach her eyes. She's not just light, Nyla continued. She's old, powerful. She doesn't even know what's inside her yet, but it's waking up. And you're scared of that? No, Nyla said slowly. I want to control it. Silas leaned back, arms folded. And if you can't? Nyla's smile sharpened. Then I'll make sure no one else does either. She stood, walked over to a drawer, and pulled out a small, worn envelope. Inside it was a faded photo, sepia-toned, edges cracked with age. A woman who looked eerily like Carter, dressed in 1920s lace, standing in a circle of candles, head bowed in prayer. Nyla traced her finger across the image. "You've lived before," she murmured, "but this time, you won't get to finish what you started." She looked up at Silas. "We're moving soon. Enzo's too smart to ignore the signs. We need to stay one step ahead." Silas smirked. "You handle the girl. I'll keep my eye on the king." Neela turned back toward the darkened window, the glass catching her reflection. "Don't get too comfortable," she said. "Kings fall every day, but some queens?" She smiled again. "They never even bleed." Chapter 20. When the past touches the present. Wednesday night. 2:07 a.m. Carter's bedroom. The room was silent, except for the soft ticking of the clock on her nightstand and the hum of wind rustling through the trees outside her window. Carter lay still beneath the covers, eyes open, breath shallow. She'd been asleep, but something had woken her, heavy, warm, familiar in a way that made her heart ache. She sat up slowly. The air in her room was thick, not scary, but charged. The kind of energy she only ever felt after a vision, or just before one. She placed her bare feet on the floor, grounding herself, and whispered softly, "I'm listening." The temperature dropped slightly, and then she was no longer in her room. She stood in a candlelit church, but not one like she knew. The pews were worn, the floorboards creaked beneath her boots. Her body felt heavier, like she was wearing a corset. A long lace gown clung to her arms, gloves buttoned at her wrists. The year was different. So was she. The whispers came first, low voices in a language she didn't speak, but somehow understood. She turned slowly, and there, kneeling in the center of the altar, was a woman. Herself, but not as she was now. This version of Carter had darker hair, longer, braided down her back. Her skin shimmered in the candlelight as she chanted softly, palms pressed to the wooden floor. Her voice was steady, her spirit deep. Protect the blood, guard the light, anchor the soul. Behind her, people circled, some in white, some in shadow, and standing at the edge of the sanctuary, Nyla, but not quite. She was dressed in red velvet, face younger, colder, eyes lit with something hungry, watching, waiting. She wasn't part of the circle. She was there to disrupt it. Carter, the current Carter, stepped forward, her voice caught in her throat. "Don't," she whispered, though no one could hear her. "Don't let her in." But the version of herself didn't move, didn't see it, didn't sense it. Nyla stepped forward and whispered something into the past Carter's ear. And everything turned to smoke. Carter gasped, snapping upright in bed, back in the present, heart pounding, hands slick with sweat. She stumbled from her sheets and grabbed her journal from the nightstand, flipping to a blank page and writing in a fury, like the words weren't hers, but coming through her. "She's followed me through lifetimes." She was there before the fall, not just jealous. She was there to break the circle. Tears slipped down her cheeks, not out of fear, but recognition. Carter whispered aloud, "She's not just here for Enzo. She's here for me." And something told her. This lifetime was her final chance to make a different choice. Chapter 21. The Woman Before Me. Wednesday, 9:16 a.m., Amina Wells' home. The garden smelled like lavender, fresh turned soil, and rain that hadn't yet fallen. Birds sang softly in the trees. Wind rustled the tall grasses in whispers. Like it, too, had secrets to tell. Carter stood in the middle of it, barefoot, her skirt brushing the tops of her calves. Her fingers still trembled from the night before. She hadn't told anyone, but there was one person who might already know. She turned as the screen door creaked open, and her mother stepped out, a ceramic mug in her hand, wrapped in a cream shawl, her locks still damp from a fresh rinse. Amina paused when she saw her daughter, head tilted slightly, like she'd been expecting this moment. Carter didn't say anything at first. She just met her mother's gaze. Then softly, "Mama." I saw her. Amina nodded once. Slow. "Come." They moved to the back porch and sat beneath the trellis of flowering vines. Amina placed the mug between them, warm hibiscus and honey, and folded her hands in her lap. "You're sure?" she asked. Carter nodded. It wasn't just a dream. It was a past life. I was in a church, or something like it. I was performing a ritual. There were others, too. People dressed in white. I was different. But I knew it was me. And then, she was there. Amina's voice was calm, but her expression changed. "Nyla?" "She wasn't called that then," Carter whispered. But it was her. Same eyes, same spirit. She came in like she belonged, but she didn't. She whispered something in my ear and everything turned to smoke. Amina looked out across the garden, her face shadowed by memory. "You're waking up faster than I thought you would." "You knew I'd see this?" "I prayed you would," Amina said, "but not everyone carries their past lives into this one with clarity. Only the ones who were never meant to forget." Carter's breath caught. "What did I forget?" Amina reached over and took her daughter's hand, warm and grounding. "You were part of a sacred order, Carter. One of the last of its kind. Women born with the ability to heal, protect, see. You carried light in your blood and guarded it through generations. And Nyla?" Amina's eyes turned cold. She was always drawn to the circle, but not to protect it. She wanted to own what she didn't earn. She studied your rituals, mimicked your energy, but she never held the light, only the hunger for it. "She tried to break it before," Carter said, voice quiet. "And she's trying again now," Amina confirmed. "But this time, she's not just after the circle. She's after you." Carter sat still, her spirit buzzing. "I'm not scared," she finally said. "You shouldn't be," Amina replied. "You're stronger now, smarter. You know how to feel what's truth and what's shadow. But Carter," she paused, "you're going to have to make a choice. Soon. A soul-deep one." "What kind of choice?" Amina stood and looked down at her daughter with fierce love. "To finish what you started lifetimes ago," she said, "or let it all fall again." The wind picked up around them, stirring the vines, the herbs, the energy. Carter closed her eyes, and in her bones she knew. The past hadn't come back by accident. It had come to be made right. Chapter 22, Old Flames, Older Shadows. Thursday, 12:44 a.m. The compound, surveillance room. The screens in front of Enzo glowed against the dark walls, cycling through camera feeds like a silent confession. He stood still, arms folded, jaw tight, eyes locked on a slowed-down clip of Nyla entering an old bookstore in South Atlanta. Vintage, off-grid, no cameras inside. She'd been there twice in the last week. Same time, same hour, always alone. Jalen sat beside him, eyes heavy but alert. "That's not a shopping trip." "No," Enzo muttered. "It's research." Jalen tapped a few keys, pulling up a list of transactions linked to Nyla's known aliases. She's been purchasing out-of-print texts. Occult history, Black Southern mysticism, women's ritual lineages dating back to the early 1900s. Enzo narrowed his eyes. What the hell is she looking for? Jalen hesitated, then pulled up a scanned page from a book Neela had ordered under a fake name. The page showed a grainy photo of women in white garments, standing in a circle surrounded by lit candles. Enzo leaned in. His blood ran cold, because one of the women, though blurred and aged, looked almost exactly like Carter. And standing off to the side, shadowed but present, was someone who looked like Nyla. Jalen's voice dropped. "You see it too?" Enzo nodded slowly, the storm already churning behind his eyes. "She's not just after me." "No," Jalen said. "She's after something deeper. Something older. She's not trying to take your girl. She's trying to rewrite history." Enzo backed away from the screen, pacing now. "She said something once," he muttered, "back when we were together. It sounded like nonsense at the time. She used to talk about energy she could feel around me, but always said it wasn't coming from me, like I was standing too close to something powerful." Jalen's brows furrowed. "You think she meant Carter?" "I didn't know Carter back then," Enzo said, "but now? I think Nyla always knew someone like her was coming, and she's been waiting." Jalen clicked over to another folder. Phone records, texts, a few old photos taken before Nyla disappeared the first time. "She was chasing a story before you ever realized it existed," Jalen said. "A myth. A woman with divine power who always came back, who was always protected, and who always died before she could fulfill her purpose." Enzo turned sharply. "Died?" Jalen nodded. "In the book she's been reading, the woman always fails, betrayed or stopped before she can complete the ritual, finish the protection cycle, or awaken the full gift. And the one who stops her?" Jalen flipped to a final page. "Is always a woman in red." Enzo's face went still, then dark. "Nyla's not trying to fight Carter," he said. "She's trying to finish a story." Jalen shut the laptop slowly. "But the question is, who told her how it ends?" Enzo looked toward the window, toward the city lit with promise and danger. "I don't care what happened in another life," he said, voice low and steel hard. "But I swear this on everything I've built. This time, she's not touching her." Chapter 23. Unlock the Fire. Friday, 7:39 p.m., Harper's apartment. East Atlanta Village. Carter sat cross-legged on a woven mat in Harper's candlelit apartment, the walls lined with shelves of crystal clusters, bundles of dried herbs, handwritten spells pinned under glass, and jars of oils and teas with hand-painted labels. A copper incense burner let out a slow curl of frankincense smoke, coiling toward the ceiling like an ancient breath. Harper, barefoot in a flowing wrap skirt and crop tee, lit the last of the white candles and stepped into the center of the circle she'd drawn in chalk across the floor. "You sure you want to do this now?" she asked softly, but her tone said she already knew the answer. "I need to remember," Carter said. "All of it." Harper nodded. "Okay then." She sat across from Carter and placed a rose quartz sphere between them, then reached for a small bowl of water charged under the last full moon. "Close your eyes," Carter did. "Breathe slow. In through your nose, out through your mouth." The room grew still. The air thickened, and Harper's voice dropped into a hum, low, melodic, layered with intention. Spirit that walks with her, blood that lived before her, gates of memory, open wide. Show her truth she carries inside. The room fell away. Just like in her vision before, Carter wasn't in her body anymore. She wasn't in the apartment, the mat, or even this time. She stood on a quiet road lined with trees, oak branches dripping with moss, sun filtering through as if the sky had secrets. A river glistened nearby, and a woman walked ahead of her, the same woman from before, the first her. She wore a linen dress, barefoot, head high. Her skin glowed gold in the light, and her energy was stronger now, More aware. This time she turned. "You came back," she said, voice soft but powerful. "I don't understand everything yet," Carter whispered. The woman smiled. "You're not supposed to. But you must remember this. You were not meant to die that night." "Then why did I?" "Because someone betrayed the circle." Carter's chest tightened. "Nyla." The woman nodded once. "She took what wasn't hers. And she failed to destroy you, but she shattered the path. That's why your gift returned in pieces. That's why the visions come slow." Carter stepped closer. "How do I stop her this time?" "You don't," the woman said gently. "You complete what we never could. You finish the bond, restore the light, and protect the key." Carter frowned. "The key?" The woman's eyes darkened. "You already know who it is." Carter gasped softly. "Enzo." "He was always meant to protect the gate," the woman said. "But this time, he must choose it." The vision began to blur, the wind rising, the trees folding into light. "Wait!" Carter called out. "Tell me what to do." "Awaken your name," the woman whispered. "Your true name. Then you'll remember everything." With a sudden inhale, Carter snapped back into her body, eyes wide, heart pounding, Harper steadying her with both hands. "You okay?" Harper asked quickly. Carter nodded, breathless. But inside her chest, a fire had been lit. A name, not Carter, sat just at the edge of her mind, waiting. And Carter knew, when she spoke it aloud, nothing would ever be the same. Chapter 24. Speak the Name. Saturday, 6:03 a.m. North Georgia foothills, Temple of the Four Winds. Mist clung to the trees as Carter stepped out of her car, her breath visible in the cool morning air. The gravel crunched beneath her boots as she walked toward a small compound tucked deep into the woods, far from any paved road, GPS signal, or city noise. She had only been here once before as a child, clinging to her mother's hand, overwhelmed by the silence, the sacredness. Now she walked with purpose. Her mother had called ahead. The elders were expecting her. The circular temple sat in the center of a wide clearing, built from red clay and river stone. Smoke from cleansing fires spiraled up from its thatched roof. Inside, the space was warm, dimly lit by lanterns and candles, the air thick with the scent of cedar, rose, and burnt herbs. Carter entered barefoot, carrying only her journal and a white linen cloth wrapped around her shoulders. The elders, 3 women and 1 man, sat on woven mats, dressed in simple robes, their eyes closed in meditation. Their presence was still and vast, like the earth itself had chosen to rest through them. One of the women opened her eyes first. Elder Naima, her hair silver and braided down her back like a crown of time. She spoke without moving her lips. "You've come to remember." Carter lowered her head. "Yes. I need to know who I was before I was Carter. I need to understand my name." Naima motioned for her to kneel inside the circle. Carter obeyed. Another elder, a man with skin like polished mahogany and a deep scar across his brow, spoke softly. "The name you seek is not a word. It's a frequency, a vibration that lives beneath your skin. You do not find it. You resonate with it." Carter nodded slowly. Elder Naima placed a hand on her forehead. Her palm was warm, buzzing with energy. "Close your eyes," she whispered, "and when the silence becomes unbearable, listen there." Darkness. Then drums, distant, slow, ancient. A river, a flame, hands pressed to the soil, voices speaking a language without words. She saw women forming circles, humming songs not yet written. She saw herself among them, again and again. Different bodies, same light. Always standing near a gate, always guarding something. Then came a whisper, not loud, not soft, just true. "Ayena." The name rippled through her body like thunder wrapped in gold. It was hers. It had always been hers. Ayenna, a name carried through lifetimes, a key spoken only when the soul was ready. Chapter 25. Name the fire. Name the war. Sunday, 4:48 p.m. Enzo's private loft. West Midtown. The loft was quiet when she arrived, sunlight slanting through floor-to-ceiling windows, catching dust in golden streaks. Carter stepped inside, her sandals quiet against the polished concrete, the weight of her new name heavy, but not burdensome. Ayenna. It vibrated in her chest now, her true self no longer tucked in the shadows. Enzo stood near the glass wall, watching the skyline, hands behind his back, posture tense, like he'd been waiting not just for her, but for this. He didn't turn when he spoke. "You came." "I had to," she said softly, stepping into the room like she was stepping across a threshold that couldn't be uncrossed. "There's something I need to tell you." He turned now, face unreadable, but his eyes burning with focus. "I need to tell you something too," he said, "but you go first." Carter drew a slow breath, then met his gaze squarely. "My name isn't just Carter." Enzo's brow rose, but he said nothing. "In this life, yes. But I remembered my true name, the one that's carried through every life before this one." She took another step forward. "It's Ayenna. It means she who binds the veil, the guardian between spirit and shadow." Enzo didn't speak for a beat, then nodded slowly. "That tracks." "You believe me?" she asked, surprised. "I do now," he said, "because I've been doing my own digging. Watching moves, following Neela, studying patterns." He motioned for her to sit, and she did. They faced each other, sunlight washing over them like quiet fire. "She's not just bitter," Enzo said. "She's obsessed. But not with me, with you. You've been the constant in every version of this story, Ayenna." He said her name carefully, like tasting something sacred. "She's not trying to get to me through you. She's trying to erase you." Carter's jaw tightened. "She tried before." "I know," Enzo said. "I found old texts, buried stories, secret journals. In every lifetime, a woman with your energy is born. She's gifted, chosen. She begins the work of protecting the world from spiritual collapse. But she never finishes." Carter swallowed. "Because of Nyla, or someone like her," Enzo said. "She never shows up the same way. Sometimes a friend, a sister, a lover, but always close. Always the betrayer." Carter's hands curled into fists in her lap. "And you?" Enzo looked her in the eye. "In every story I found, there's a protector." Her breath caught. "He's not always called that. Sometimes he's a soldier, a bodyguard, a servant. Sometimes he dies before he can fulfill the role. But when he survives long enough to stand beside her, that's when the cycle begins to break." "And you think that's you?" "I know it is," he said. "The moment I saw you, I didn't feel attraction. I felt assignment. Like I'd been waiting 1,000 years for the chance to get it right this time." Carter's chest rose and fell with the weight of it. "So what now?" "Now we stop pretending this is coincidence," Enzo said. "We stop moving separately. You've remembered who you are. I'm starting to remember who I've always been." He paused, then added, "And we get ahead of whatever move Nyla's about to make." Carter looked down, then up again, eyes glowing with something deep and ancient. "I think the past is waking up faster than the present can catch it." "Then let's catch it first," Enzo said. They sat there in silence, both finally speaking as who they were, not who the world told them to be. No more denial, no more half-truths. Just Ayenna and the man who'd been sent to protect her, not just from what's coming, but from what's already begun.